welcome to Author Chat. I'm Mark Causey. With me is Francesca Maria.
Hello.
We're from Black Cat Publishing, the publishers of Black Cat Tales, an anthology of black cats. And with us today is a couple of authors from the book. Welcome. Francie, why don't you give us the first introduction?
Okay, let me put on my old lady glasses first. Loren, welcome Loren and Joanie. Loren Rhoads is the author of almost 30 stories about Alondra de Corval. Those stories have appeared in Best New Horror, Strange California, Occult Detective Magazine, Weird Book, and others, including Loren's short story collection, Unsafe Words. She's the author or co-author of 5 novels, including the As Above, So Below duology about a succubus who falls in love with an angel. I gotta add that to my reading list. Loren lives in San Francisco with Nocturne and Amulet, only one of which is a black cat. Her latest book is the nonfiction guide, 222 Cemeteries to See Before You Die. Follow Loren's adventures or learn more about her work at lorenrhoads.com. Welcome, Loren.
Thanks.
I'm glad to be here.
Also with us is Joanie Brittingham. I'll also put on my old people glasses so I can read. Joanie Brittingham is a writer and soprano living in New York City. Brittingham is the associate editor for Classical Singer magazine, the author of Practicing for Singers, and has contributed to many classical music textbooks. Brittingham's writing has been described as breathless comedy and having real wit by the New York Classical Review. Brittingham is the librettist for the opera Serial Killers and the City, which premiered with Experiments in Opera and will be a part of New Wave Opera's Night of the Living Opera on Instagram and TikTok at Joanie Brittingham. Welcome, Joanie. Thanks for joining us.
Well, hi, happy to be here.
Woohoo! So we both loved your stories to pieces. And so what we want to do is talk to you guys about kind of your inspiration for your stories. And so Loren, if you don't mind kicking us off, so your story, Black as Shadow, Red as Blood, White as Bone. Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis without spoiling anything?
Oh my goodness. I've been writing all these Alondra stories, and Alondra often gets drawn into these situations where everything else has failed, and then they decide, okay, we've got to have a witch to, we've tried exorcism, we've tried everything, and she gets called to a zoo to deal with a residual haunting.
I love it.
Enough.
That's great. And for those of us who don't know, tell us a little bit more about Alondra. So who is she? What's her character like? And I see that you sprinkled her in a bunch of different stories, which is cool.
I've been writing about her for, I don't know, 30 years, something like that. And for a long time when I traveled, it was research for the Alondra stories because, then you can write it off. So she's traveled all around the world. She's gotten involved in all kinds of occult shenanigans, and she's been a lot of fun to write with. She doesn't always do what people ask, but she does what people needs. So sometimes the interplay there is interesting, fun to work with.
That's great. Is she like Hellboy, like BPRD, like going out to solve paranormal crimes and mysteries?
Sort of, yeah. One of the pieces I had published last year was she teams up with the succubus from my novels, and they take on the LAPD down in Venice. So that was fun.
That's awesome. And so your story takes place, spoiler, San Francisco Zoo, which I think you live pretty close to it, don't you?
Yeah, it was inspired by it. It's actually moved to a different zoo, but a couple of years ago, I don't know how much I should say, a couple of years ago on Christmas, there was a animal got loose in the zoo, and I was fascinated by the story and the way it played out. So that was the inspiration for the story.
Oh, I didn't know that. So is some of this stuff actually true that you wrote?
Inspired by.
Inspired by. Got it.
Sort of based on a true story.
Yeah, loosely.
I love it. Well, you captured the zoo kind of feeling and the environment perfectly. I felt like I was absolutely there walking the cobbled steps along the different cages and things. It was great.
And Joanie, your story, The Golden Hairball, also one of our favorite stories, really, really fun. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your tale?
Yeah, so mine is based on a man who is walking home from a Costco with a chicken. and
Yes, you
he
do.
runs across a black cat, or so it seems. And I based my story around when I was thinking about black cats. I based my story around the folk tale of the Madagot, which is a creature that often appears as a black cat. Sometimes it appears as a rabbit or as other um, different types of creatures. And one of the things that it is known for in folklore, and a lot of the writing that I do is inspired by folklore, and inspired by I went to West Virginia University. I know all the cryptids.
Nice.
um,
Yeah.
I my roommate in college lived fairly close to where all the Mothman
Mothman, yep.
things happened. So I've always been really fascinated by this idea of these creatures that exist kind of on the periphery.
Uh-huh.
And my story is about a character who exists on the periphery
Mhm.
because his life is not together. And so these two very lost creatures, it's strange to have heartwarming horror.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I've kind of made a priority in my writing, aside from I like comedy. This one's not as funny as some of my other writing, but I want a happy ending.
Mhm.
And that's not a spoiler. There's a happy ending for both the man and the cat.
That's great. We need more happy endings these days, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I like that idea of heartfelt horror.
Mhm.
I personally like to talk about happy endings. In any sort of situation, I need someone to root for. Even if I think it's going to go poorly for this person, I still want to, like the character. And that can be tricky in horror stories or in a scary element. You do a great job with that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. I think a lot of horror, especially horror movies, like all these terrible things happen to really likable characters and then it ends and it's like the monster is gone, but like we don't know what their life is going to look like now after all of this. And so I kind of wanted to wrap it up in a way that lets you know that like not only is the monster gone or safe in its carrier,
Yeah.
um, or but that the character is going to be okay.
Yeah. And that was a bit of a tearjerker at the end, so spoiler. But yeah, that was hard to read the last few sentences, the last paragraph there. So Joni, I'm curious about your singing career. So you are a multi-talented artist. What made you decide to write horror?
So I've always loved reading horror and watching horror, although I can't really sit still. If I watch a horror movie, I have to do it at home and not in the movie theater. Because I'm one of those people that like the popcorn flies in the air because I all the jump scares get me. And that's one of the things about like I sing opera, and so there's no jump scares. Like
Yeah.
everything takes a really long time to happen. But at the same time, I just really part of why I went into it, aside from loving singing, is that like I loved the kind of extreme storytelling
Hmm.
that was a part of opera. And I sang during the pandemic. I sang with Experiments in Opera with a podcast opera that they did. And it was just such a weird experience. And I was talking to one of the composers after and saying, like, it's just so fun to sing these, like, kind of weird, new, different operas and that are about these, like, modern stories. Like, one was about a girl who, a porta potty was a portal to a different dimension where she saw her life played out differently.
Wow.
Um, and I was just like, this is so fascinating. I loved it. And he was like, well, there's not a whole like the librettos, the stories are interesting and the music like really draws us, but a lot of the writing is terrible. And he's like, anybody can write a libretto. And I was like, haha, even me. And he said, no, really, you should apply for our writers' room.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I did. And after that process, my mom was like, man, I remember when you used to write these bizarre short stories when you were a kid. You wrote about all these monsters, and I was like, I forgot that I did that. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to it, and I've been kind of writing prolifically since.
I love it.
Love it.
Amazing, amazing. I love to see the juxtaposition of opera and horror writing, and you explain it so well. It's like, of course, she writes horror because of the extreme opera that she does. Perfect, makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense.
Lauren, how long have you been writing?
Um, ever,
Forever. Yeah,
ever, yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
always kind of the dark speculative fiction stuff.
yeah, I started out writing kind of fantasy vampire stuff and kind of wandered into nonfiction, and then now I'm wandering back into the fantasy horror stuff.
I love it. And you got a lot of nonfiction stuff with your Cemeteries to See Before You Die
Yeah,
series.
yeah. The last the 222 came out in the fall last year, and so that's been really fun. I got to It's the first time it's ever happened to me. A book I wrote sold so well that the editors came back to me and said, would you update it? And yeah, sure I would. But 222 is still not very many. I could do 500 and still be happy. So
Yes, volume 3, please.
that's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
It's awesome. It's great.
I always like to ask about the writing process. Every writer has their way of doing things. I guess it's sort of a two-part thing. Lauren, I'll start with you because one, I'm really interested in as a comic book person. There's world building and then there's universe building. When you have a character in different books and when you're using and team ups, as you say, and things. I don't want to get too specific. Tell us a little bit about your writing process. Both, some writers do the plot. Some writers write as they go. However it is.
Panther or
How do
plotter?
you approach your next work?
Oh, I'm definitely a pantser.
Yeah.
I hate to outline. I don't want to know what's going to happen. Often it takes me a long time to write a story because I start with the setting, and obviously I know the character, so it's just a matter of finding out what this story is about in this place. And the story about the zoo was written a couple of years ago for a call that was really, really short, and I just could not get the story I wanted to tell in the time frame that I had. And then Francie and I were talking at StokerCon last year, and she was saying, think of black cats, not just house cats, but think of all the black cat spirits in the world. What can you do with that? I was like, oh yes, I know just the story. So
Wahaha.
yeah. So, and then once I knew how it needed to end, it came together super fast.
That's great. Joni, pantser or plotter?
Uh, not really either.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I feel like the plot, like the overarching plot, just kind of comes to me with a story, and then things kind of fill out.
Yeah.
And other times it's the character, or just even like with this one, it was really just the image of a black cat begging for the chicken, just like my own cat. As soon as I get home, if there's a rotisserie chicken, the cat is, I don't know how I don't see her enter the kitchen. She
Mhm.
magically appears and is screaming for chicken. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the start of my story. And then it's more like the characters talk to me.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar process for how I develop a character as a performer, that it's just kind of like the character is like, no, that's not what happens because I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
And then they kind of tell me what comes next.
Mhm. Love it.
I have a second part to the question. Um as far as process, so is there a place that you write, a specific place that you like to do your work, or are you happy to be writing anywhere else? Is there a particular snack that you like to dive into as you write? I don't know, some most creative
Ritual.
people, yeah, are somewhat ritualistic. Do you have any specific rituals for the way you write? Joni, why don't we start with
Joan,
you?
Okay. I was my husband worked for Chautauqua Opera for many years, and so I got to go with him. And one of the things that was a joy was hearing all the writers who would come. And one of the writers, when someone asked about his writing process, he said, if you can write with a refrigerator in the house, you can write anywhere. Because he was talking about procrastination, and that's always been kind of the thing that kept me from writing for a long time. And now I feel like it's just anytime anything comes out, I'll put it in my phone on the subway. I'll write it on a sticky note. I have sketches on the backs of envelopes. I move my computer regularly around my apartment. I don't have a specific place and not even a specific time. I do have I have iced tea today, but I do have a cup of tea almost all the time. So it's one of those things where it's just like, as long as I get 1,000 words a day minimum, it doesn't matter where or when or how.
Nice.
And I know that sounds completely chaotic, but it was so freeing to, because I thought that I had to like do it at a certain time and do it a certain way, largely because of the way I was taught to practice as a singer, as a pianist. And I realized that it's a lot freer than that. You don't have to be at the piano playing the scales before you start playing the piece. Sometimes snippets of the piece come while you're, waiting in line at the DMV.
That's great. And how about you, Loren?
That's the way I write too. I supposedly have writing hours, but often I goof around in my writing hours, and so I have to write whenever. But I never have kept myself to a word count, certain number of words a day or whatever. In the perfect world, I'd be sitting in the sofa in the front window watching the birds and writing in my notebook. But
Nice.
Sometimes you're writing on the dashboard of your car as you're waiting for your kid, or
Right.
something like that. So, yeah.
Wherever the muse strikes you.
Mm-hmm.
So Joanie, you kind of perfectly described real cat behavior. So let's talk about your cat. So do you guys have cats currently with you?
Yes, I have one cat. She as soon as she hears a call start,
Yeah.
she bolts. She learned during the pandemic that would mean that she would be brought up for display, and she hates that. So she has disappeared to whatever dimension cats go to when they don't want to be seen. Her name is Abby Rhoads. She's a tabby, and she was a rescue. There's a cat rescue in my neighborhood that does catch and spay, neuter, release for the feral cats. And she came right up to them begging for food while they were setting the traps for the feral cats. And they were like, oh, this was somebody's kitty and they didn't want her anymore. And so then I adopted her, and she has a strict policy of she never wishes to go outside ever again.
Okay.
And she's dissatisfied with the service much of the time.
Yep.
But she does have a semi-adequate staff. I love her so much. She's so awful.
You've described cats perfectly. How about you, Loren?
Well, I've got the two, and they're both Humane Society babies. And I really thought if I, brought the treats, I could get some attention. But no, she's staring at me through the French doors. So,
Of course.
apparently not. But the oldest one is Nocturne. She's the black cat. She's, I don't know, 8 pounds of cat and 12 pounds of fluff, something like that. She's big and fluffy. And the other one is Amulet, who was feral for 4 months before we got her. And she's still not entirely sure we're not going to kill and eat her, but we've had her 10 years.
Wow.
She likes people okay if they're not moving. So if you're sitting on the sofa, she'll come and be petted now, which is a huge change. That's just in the last couple of years.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, she's very pretty, but she fears for her life often.
Oh, poor kitty.
I'm a little the other way around. I think that sometimes my cat will kill and eat me.
Yeah.
I'm sure that,
entirely-
if I fell on the floor, they wouldn't take them maybe an hour. They'd think about it, but
Yeah.
I'm a little with Joni. I think my cat is slightly dissatisfied with the service,
Correct.
and so I sort of sleep with one eye open sometimes. So I always also like to ask folks advice for new writers or advice for people who have a regular job and they want to be writers or think they could be writers. At what point did you decide that this was something you wanted to do with your life?
Ever. I mean, every job I ever had was just to fund being able to write. Um, uh, the key for me was stopping taking jobs that required me to be creative. Because pretty much every corporate job I ever had, once they found out I could write, that was my job. Suddenly I'm writing texts for them, and no, I don't want to spend my creativity working for someone else. Um, that was what worked for me. I love the fact that you say, that you have these two arts that you juggle.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will second what Lauren said about a job that requires creativity because I did grant writing for a while, and nothing creative came out of me, not singing, not writing in that period, and it really just kind of sucked all of that energy dry. And for me, the singing and the writing do feed each other. Because if I'm stuck writing a story and I go and like just practice music, it often clears
Mm.
things for me. For writers, I'll say the same thing that composer told me. Well, just do it. Anybody can do it. Look
Nice.
at some of the things
Yeah.
that are published out there. There's wonderful, beautiful books and stories that are being published, but there's also a lot of crap. So it's perfectly fine to write crap and then edit it or throw it
Mhm.
away and write something that's slightly less crap and just keep practicing until you get better at it.
So, what do you guys have coming out next?
I've got a book of essays that, if my proofreader will ever finish with it, should be coming out this summer.
Great.
Yeah, I'm going to run a Kickstarter. I'm calling it a cemetery memoir, but it's basically my life in cemeteries, from college, sneaking into a cemetery at night with a gang of friends, to burying my dad a couple of years ago.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see that. And
Thank
do you
you.
have a title for it?
It's a sequel to that guy, so
Oh,
it's
great.
this one's Wish You Were Here, and the other one is Still Wish You Were Here.
Oh, lovely.
Thank
That
you.
sounds awesome. Can't wait to see that. How about you, Joni? What do you got coming out?
I don't have anything coming out right away, but I do have a couple of new operas that are in the hopper.
Right.
So that process is very slow, and dependent on a lot of granting institutions that we don't know what that's going to look like.
Right.
So
Yeah.
a little slow with that. I did just finish 2 days ago the first draft of my first novel. So
Congratulations. That's huge.
thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited. It needs a lot of work, but I finished it, and I'm really thrilled that, you know, that there's something on the page.
Amazing.
Pages, many pages.
Can you give us a little taste or sneak peek?
Yeah, it was based on someone had shared a meme years ago saying that, like, you're getting older when no one shows up on your door to tell you you're the chosen one to fight this monster and go to magic school. And I thought, well, what if they lost your acceptance letter
Oh, I love
and you're in your 50s with a metal knee, and you and your retired husband and your elderly dog go to magic school.
it. Yeah.
So it's a cozy fantasy, about second chances and about being a non-traditional student.
I love it. Does it have a title yet?
Not yet. Um, it may just be non-traditional magic. I'm not sure.
I love it. That sounds amazing. So we can't thank you guys enough for joining us for Black Cat Tales author chat.
Hmm.
And we can't wait for everyone to read your awesome stories coming out Friday the 13th of June, 2025.
Yay.
Yay!
Thanks again,
Thank
you
you so much
guys.
for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.